Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Laura Schroff, and she's here to share with us her newly released young adult book, An Invisible Thread. Now, Laura is a former advertising executive who helped launch 3 of the most successful startups in Time Inc. history: InStyle, Teen People, and People Style Watch. Laura also worked as the New York division manager at People magazine. Since the release of An Invisible Thread, Laura has been a keynote speaker at over 300 schools, libraries, charities, and bookstores, encouraging people to find their own visible thread of connection and appreciate small, powerful acts of kindness. So let's welcome to the show, Laura Schroff.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much for having me on your show. I very much appreciate it. Yes.
Oh, yeah. What an honor it is to spend this time with you and, of course, to talk about this book. And, I've got to ask you, there's so many questions I have, but why don't we start, I think, with one that everyone's thinking of. It's like, why did you adapt this book into a young adult book?
I adapted An Invisible Thread into a young reader's edition because when An Invisible Thread was released in 2011, I never could have imagined that it would be adopted by schools all across the country. So I've probably spoken at about 100 schools. And the big question has always been from educators, is there any thought of adapting the book for young readers between the ages of 8 and 12 so that I can also really have children within that age group, usually children in middle school, read the book. So that's really the primary reason why I made the decision to do it.
Well, and I think it really provides a unique skill set for young people to learn. And so for our listeners that are new to you, your book has been sold in so many different languages. It's highly popular. But if someone's new to your work, why don't we share a little bit about An Invisible Thread?
Sure. Okay. So An Invisible Thread, it's a true story, and it takes place back in 1986, and which is really kind of amazing about the book. It seems to be timely, and also, which I'm so proud about, is that it seems to be timeless. So back in 1986, as I was walking up West 56th Street in New York City, a young boy by the name of Maurice Mazak stopped me and said, "Excuse me, lady, do you have any spare change? I'm hungry." And originally I said no, and I walked away. But then as I walked towards Broadway, I realized what he said, and those 3 simple words, "I am hungry," made me turn around and go back. And I said to him, "I don't want to give you any money, but if you're hungry, I'll take you over to McDonald's and I'll get you something to eat." And so we had lunch, and then we spent some time together that afternoon. And then throughout the entire week, I couldn't seem to get him out of my mind. So on Thursday night, I decided to leave work a little early. At the time, I was working at USA Today. Unbeknownst to me that night, he was really hungry, and he thought maybe if he stood on the same corner, he would see me again, and I might offer to take him to dinner. So as I turned the corner, there he was. I asked him if he was hungry. He told me he was starving, so I took him over to McDonald's again. And while we were having dinner, I said, "I've got a great idea." I said, "Would you like to meet me on the corner next Monday night? And I'll take you to the Hard Rock Cafe." And we had dinner that Monday night, and we wound up meeting every Monday for the next 4 years and hundreds of times thereafter. And so sorry for that very long-winded explanation.
Oh, no, I'm so glad that you took the time to explain that, because I think when we are passing people that come along our path, a lot of times it's easy to kind of just write them off or not give them a second thought. But what was it that made you kind of stop and turn back and connect with Maurice?
It was really for 2 reasons. First of all, in New York City back in the 80s, you did see lots of homeless people on the street, but it was pretty rare to see a child. He was only 11 years old when I met him. So the fact that he was a child struck me. And then, of course, when he said he was hungry, I thought, how is it possible this child could be on a street corner by himself, asking for money to get something to eat? And that's really the reason why I went back. But as I was sitting across the table from him at McDonald's, he had the sweetest and the most trusting eyes, and he was just adorable. And so when we were done with lunch, I said, "Do you want to take a walk to the park?" And he said, "Sure." And what's interesting is more often than not, Maurice expected people to treat him as if he were invisible. And so we took a walk to the park. When we came out of the park, I saw Haagen-Dazs. I said, "Would you like some ice cream?" And he looked over at Haagen-Dazs. He said, "Designer ice cream?" So I said, "Well, I guess." And after we had ice cream together, he asked me if I like to play video games. And I said, "I do." And so we went to a video arcade and we played some video games. And that's when I gave him my card. And I said, "If you're ever hungry, give me a call and I'll buy you dinner." But the whole week, I just couldn't get those sweet and trusting eyes out of my mind. And that's when I decided on Thursday night to see if I could try to find him.
Mm. As the years went on, how did Maurice impact your life and how did you impact his?
Well, I would say probably the fifth time of getting together, I thought it would be great to make him a home-cooked meal. Now, what I did not know at the time was that Maurice really didn't understand why I was being kind to him. He was positive my kindness came with a price. So when I invited him over to my apartment, he was sure that this was the night that he would find out what I really wanted from him. And I could see that he was nervous, so I asked him to sit down on the couch, and I went and I got him a Diet Coke. I said, "I want to have a conversation with you." I said, "But we're going to have this conversation only once. So you have to listen to me very carefully." I said, "The reason why I invited you to my home is I consider you a friend." I said, "And friendship is built on trust. So I want to make it very clear. If anything's ever missing from my apartment, we'll no longer be friends." And he looked at me with this very puzzled expression. And I said to him, "Do you understand what I'm saying?" He said to me, "You just want to be my friend? That's it?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "Of course." And with that, he surprised me. He stood up, he put his hand out, and he said, "Miss Laura, a deal is a deal." And that evening, we did shake hands, and it was that evening that we built a bond of trust that has now continued for over 33 years. And so people would say to me all the time, "Maurice was so lucky to have met you." And I would always comment that I was so lucky to have met Maurice because he changed my life in so many profound ways. I was working at USA Today at the time, and I just worked and, had dinner with friends and things like that. And then all of a sudden, this child came into my life. I was single. I had no children. And he gave me purpose that I just had never experienced before.
Wow. And it's so heartfelt, the connection that the two of you have. I mean, I'm sure not only readers, but as people hear this story and people who have heard your story in the past, they make that connection. You can tell that there's this deep connection. And I love the title, An Invisible Thread, because you talk about how that impacts us.
Well, an invisible thread is an ancient Chinese proverb. An invisible thread connects those that are destined to meet, regardless of time, place, and circumstance. The thread may stretch or tangle, but it will never break. And just 2 weeks ago, we had dinner, and it just so happened to be on a Monday night. And we were talking, and I said, who could have ever imagined that over 33 years ago, that one little simple lunch would bring us to this point where it's 33 years later, and your life has changed so much, and my life has changed so much. But at the end of the day, here we are still having dinner together.
And what a remarkable bond that the two of you have. Now, you talk about Maurice being very likable and someone you can really connect with. Do other people, they felt the same way? Because I think when people think about bringing somebody that's a stranger into their home, sometimes they feel like that could be like a scary thing.
Well, it's really interesting because all of my friends and my colleagues at work and my family were all really concerned. Maurice only lived 2 blocks from me. I lived on 54th Street. He lived on 56th Street. No, I lived on 56th Street, and he lived on 54th. Mm-hmm. And he was living at the time at the Bryant Hotel. And people were very concerned that I was putting myself in potential danger. And I used to say to them all the time, I said, "You know what? I got to tell you, this is a really good kid. And sometimes you just have to follow your heart. And that's really kind of what I did do. I followed my heart.
What was life like for Maurice at home?
Well, it's hard to imagine. He was 11 years old. He lived at the Bryan Hotel. I saw the room only once, and it was a room that was about the size of 12 by 12, any small size bedroom. There were 2 single beds, no bedding, pillows, or blankets. On one side, there was a chair, and on the opposite side sat a half of a refrigerator with a television that sat on top. He lived in this room with his mother, his grandmother, his 2 sisters, his aunt, 2 baby cousins, and uncles who came and went. Unfortunately, his father, as Maurice would say, was a thug and a drug dealer and a drug addict. And unfortunately, his mother, whom he loved dearly, was addicted to heroin and crack. And she was really unable to take care of him. So here he was, 11 years old, having no choice but to really fend for himself.
It's so heartbreaking, and it really kind of seems like the both of you came into each other's life at like a perfect time.
I absolutely believe my mother, who passed away at the very young age of only 47 when I was 25, I've always believed she's been by my side. I believe it with all of my heart. And I think she knew I needed more in my life. And she also felt that Maurice needed more in his life. And I have no doubt that she brought us together.
Yeah, some of that divine intervention went on there for sure, it feels like, right?
It's really interesting. Every speaking engagement I go to, there's always a Marie, a Mary, or a Maria in the room. And I know it's my mother's simple way of telling me that she's with me. So when I saw today and I was reviewing everything, that your name was Mary Ann, I thought, oh, isn't that nice? She's with me today.
Aw, you're going to love that. No, well, and I love how these stories unfold, people's lives unfold. I mean, Maurice is just a remarkable individual, and so are you. You both are just very remarkable individuals that would take time and notice one another. And is that like one of the things that you want young adults to learn?
The Young Readers Edition, I'm very excited about it because I do believe that children are never too young to teach them to be kind and make them more aware of how kindness can really make a difference. So with the Young Readers Edition, it is being targeted to children ages 8 to 12. And I've been very blessed to also have a co-writer, Alex Trezanowski, who has worked with me on all of my books. But writing this book, for children between the ages of 8 and 12, first of all, it's in the voice of Maurice. So it's from an 11-year-old boy's perspective. Maurice today is 45 years old, so you can only imagine how old I am. But of course, we had to tone the book down. So, for example, in the big book, An Invisible Thread, we talk about how his mother, was addicted to heroin and crack. And there, are stories in the book that are pretty harsh. But in the Young Readers Edition, Maurice's mother is not addicted to drugs. She just has a sickness. I felt that it was really important, for children who want to put 2 and 2 together. I would prefer for them to speak to their teachers or to their parents about drug use and it not be so blatant in the book. So the Young Readers Edition is told, in a much softer, more innocent voice. But I do believe that we have been able to keep the heart of the story there. I also came from a pretty volatile childhood, so a lot of the stories from my childhood that are in An Invisible Thread are not in the children's book because they would just be too harsh for children to read. In fact, over the last summer, I gave the manuscript to 8 children between the ages of 8 and 12 and asked if they could read the book and then provide a review. And I felt 100% comfortable giving this book to children and saying, and having them read it. Parents have asked me on many occasions, how old can my child be to read An Invisible Thread? And I have always said anything under 13 years old. I highly recommend you either read the book first or you read the book with your child, but that anything under 13 years old, they're too young to read, and it's the adult book of An Invisible Thread.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's just some topics that with age may be better, you know?
Totally. Absolutely.
Well, and you know, the invisible thread, An Invisible Thread it gives such a beautiful accounting of both your story and Maurice's. You know, when we look at when it comes to a point, I mean, you get married and then you guys start spending less and less time together. How was that like for you?
Well, you know, it's so interesting because we've now known each other for 33 years. And, you know, we can sometimes go weeks on end without speaking to each other just because his life is busy, my life is busy. Mm-hmm. And then we'll pick up the phone and we'll talk, and it will be just like we left off just yesterday with any really solid, strong relationship. You know, sometimes you can go, you know, a short period of time or a period of time without speaking, but the moment you start to speak, you just kind of pick up from where you left off. And the thing that I'm most proud about with Maurice is, you know, people don't understand how difficult it is sometimes for children to break cycles. They don't break these cycles not because they don't want to, but because they don't even know it's a cycle that needs to be broken. You know, they're living in a norm in an abnormal situation, but they don't really know that it is. And it's not until you open up their eyes to another kind of environment, pardon me, that they then realize it. You know, Maurice thought his life seemed pretty normal until he started to see my life. And so the wonderful thing about Maurice is he broke that cycle. And he's been married to Michelle for 20 years. They've been together for 25 years. They have an absolutely beautiful family, and all the kids, thank God, I always knock on wood, are doing really well. And his children will never know from poverty, hunger, and violence. They just won't. And his children's children will be even that much further removed from it. But that's a really hard cycle to break when you don't know the difference. You know, one of the stories in An Invisible Thread, which people love, is when he came out to my sister Annette's house on Long Island. And my sister's children were about the same age as Maurice. And he had never been outside of New York City, so the whole day was really magical for him. But driving home that night, I asked him what his favorite part of the day was. And I thought it would be that he was playing on the swings with Colette, Derek, and Brooke, or going for a bike ride with Derek. And he said, Miss Laura, I love that room. I said, what room? He said, you know, that fancy room where we had dinner. And I said, well, that's called a dining room. I said, why? He said, I love that big table. He said, and how everybody was laughing and talking and sharing so much love across the table. He said, I thought the food was great. He said, but you know, he said, someday, he said, when I grow up, he said, I want to have a room just like that. And I realized in that moment that I was making a difference. And today, when you go into Maurice's cramped apartment, he doesn't have a living room. He has a dining room with a large dining room table, and that's where he and his family hang out.
You've got to love that, though, because for him, you can hear how that was about community and love and togetherness, you know?
And I think with the Young Readers Edition, too, what I'm excited about is that it really does, first and foremost, open up the eyes. It opens up to children who come from fortunate families to see how blessed they are, that something as simple as sitting down at a dining room table and having dinner is something that they should not take for granted, that they should really understand that they're really lucky, because 1 in 4 children in America today are still hunger deprived. And so for the children who are fortunate, they come away from the book feeling like they're really lucky. They're fortunate and they should count their blessings. And for children who are less fortunate, they come away with this sense of hope that they too can break away from the kind of life that they're living.
Mm-hmm. It shows them that there's actually a cycle there that can't be broken.
Yes.
So where they may not have even realized before that was even something to look at.
Yeah. And also in the back of the book, which I love, and I talk about it, I've done quite a few schools already, and God, the children between the ages of 8 and 12 are just so absolutely adorable. I mean, I'm like in my glory. I can't even get over it. And then we do the Q&A, and of course, their questions are so innocent and they're so sweet. And I tell them, any questions, there's no questions that are off limit. And I can tell by their questions that they're really like listening to the story and they're comprehending it and they're getting it. But then I turn it over to what they think are small acts of kindness. And in the back of the book, there is a listing of lots of acts of kindness that the children can incorporate into their lives every day. Something as simple as thanking the people who serve them lunch every day, or saying thank you to the people who keep their schools so sparkling clean. Or if you see a child who's sitting alone during lunch, invite that child over to your table, so that no one has to have lunch by themselves. The same thing with recess. Or invite that child to a party because they want to come to your party, but they're not part of your group. And you can just, when you listen to what children say they think are small acts of kindness, it's just truly amazing. And I feel so enormously blessed to have this opportunity to be able to speak at schools and to meet with children of this age group. I mean, I can't get over it. And the name of the book, I know that you've commented on it and you love it. When we were working on the manuscript, every name I came up with, Alex didn't like, and every name he came up with, I didn't like. And I was rushing and I had to go to a birthday party. So I ran downstairs to Duane Reade, which is kind of like a CVS or a Walgreens, where normally I would go to my actual card store. And I stood in front of the cards. I had never purchased a card in Duane Reade. And I saw this card and I picked it up, and it said, there's an old saying, how an invisible thread connects those that are destined to meet. And I opened up the card and it said, and I'm so happy you're in my life and happy birthday. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And there were 5 cards. I bought them all. I bought a card for my friend, and I ran upstairs and I Googled an invisible thread. And that's when I found out it was an ancient Chinese proverb. And I called Alex and I said, oh my God. I said, I've got the name of the book. I said, you're not going to believe it. I said, Google an invisible thread. And he said to me, oh my God. He said, Lori, you're brilliant. I said, Alex, I'm looking at an American Greetings card. But kind of going back to your name, Marianne, I have no doubt that my mother, she put that card in my hand, that she knew that was the perfect title for my book.
Oh, and without a doubt, yeah.
And that's how I came up with the name of the book.
That is what a beautiful story. And it's interesting. So now everyone that's looking to name their book is going to go running to that store, trying to figure out, if they can find a good name as well. But
right off of looking for American Greetings or Hallmark cards, there's got to be one.
Well,
when I go to speaking engagements, people will always say, "My God, how did you come up with the name of the book? I love the name, or the name is brilliant." And when I tell them I got it off of an American Greetings card, they just can't get over it.
But when you hear that story, though, it makes sense, because that seems like that's how your story, your journey has been.
And I encourage children to think about their own invisible thread connections that they might already have in their lives, and also to always remember that they will have in their lifetime other invisible threads, connections that will come into their life. And they've come into their life for a very specific reason. It can be an invisible thread connection, can be with your teacher who's really just made a profound difference in your life, or one of their coaches from sports. You just never know. But to be aware that there are these invisible thread connections, and you can all have your own if you just, again, open up your eyes and hearts to your surroundings and try to acknowledge them.
Yeah. Well, and you're so right, because with having that level of awareness, like you did when you first met Maurice, when you stopped and turned around when he said, I'm hungry, and you turned around and went back and made that decision, like, hey, let's go get you something to eat. I mean, you're a professional. You work in some pretty fast paced media, so I'm sure that you had work that you had to do, but you took the time to do that.
That's another very kind of interesting day because I was working at USA Today, and it was the Monday of Labor Day weekend, and I was supposed to go to the US Open. And I woke up that morning, and it was pouring rain, and the Open was canceled. So it just so happened that day I had no plans because I wasn't going to the Open. And, in the early afternoon, finally the sun came out, and I decided to go for a walk. But I was just going for a walk, and that is when I met Maurice. So that too, I think, happened for a reason, because you're right. I, was working in advertising, and I was always working. One of the things that I got from both of my parents is a work ethic. And, but that particular day I had no plans.
It's interesting with that type of work, and people don't really understand how advertising executives, how intense that work is, and how intense doing the media type of work, how much demand there is on people. So to have that free time is really divine within itself.
The whole thing, I look back on it all, and it really does kind of take my breath away. People have been telling me for years and years and years, you should write a book. And I'm like, write a book? It's just our story. And then finally, when I did take an early retirement package from Time Inc. and I had some time, I decided to sit down and kind of work on my book. But I never in my wildest dreams ever could have imagined it would resonate, with hundreds of thousands and thousands of people all across the country and around the world. In fact, I just sent an email to a woman this morning. She read my book in Turkey, and she translated it. And then she said that she just recently had 2 encounters with 2 boys, and it was because of an invisible thread. It takes my breath away. Yeah, wow. Turkey.
To see the impact that makes, I mean, it's interesting when you have something this profound as an invisible thread that reaches people, not only the young people, but people in other countries. You never know the impact that it's going to make in one person's life, let alone like a community.
Well, that's kind of like it is my hope that the takeaway is, you don't have to change the world, but if we can all just do one small act of kindness or try to make a difference every day in just a small little way, imagine the ripple effect that it can have. Because, there's another woman that I think is wonderful. Her name is Dr. Dale Atkins, and she came out with a book recently called The Kindness Advantage. In fact, she has a chapter in another book that I did, which is Angels on Earth. And she's a kindness expert. And she talks about how kindness is contagious and how the more you do it, the more you want to incorporate it into your day because it makes you feel good. And her book is doing really well, too. And the name of the book is The Kindness Advantage. But kindness is contagious. And I tell children in schools all the time that it's the best high of all because it's contagious and makes you feel good and you want to do it over and over and over again.
Wow. Well, with learning this skill set, young people are off to, I think, a head start in life with being able to be more aware and seeing what's going on. Goodness, Laura, we could talk forever. You're such an inspiration. Where can our listeners connect with you and be part of your community?
I would love that. Well, first of all, my website is Laura Schroff, and that's SCHROFF. And
Schroff.com.
Yeah. LauraSchroff.com, yes. And then I'm on Facebook. I have an author page, and then I also have Laura Carino Schroff on Facebook. I'd love for them to Facebook me, become friends with me. And then on Instagram, Laura and Invisible Thread.
Well, I'm connected with you. I highly suggest everyone does the same and pick up their own copy of An Invisible Thread. Laura, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you for being my Mary. That always makes me feel really good.
Well, thank you, Laura. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course to talk about the young adult version of An Invisible Thread. So excited that's out there. Again, if you'd like to connect with Laura, you can at her website, lauraschroff.com. And Invisible Thread's available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.